All right, good morning. We are recording. Today is June 21st. How's everybody doing? Good morning. Okay, see Janice coming in. All right. We are coming off of a probably very busy weekend for a lot of you. Some folks have been traveling, if not celebrating and taking some time to spend time with family. And then yesterday, we're thankful that we have now a federal holiday that is marking the remembrance of Juneteenth. So that's why we were off on Monday, the 20th. Actually, we know Juneteenth was the 19th, but off on the 20th Monday. And that's the reason why we're meeting today, Tuesday, the 21st. Just an announcement, we will meet, our next meeting will be on Monday, the 27th. So we'll go back to Monday, the 27th. Monday, June 27th is our next. Thankful for those who are watching this virtual. If you're not able to join us at 11, thank you so much for watching the video. So now, first things first, let's go over a few announcements. So for those who are here and if you're watching, here are a few announcements, and I'll go to your page in just a second. Quiz 1. Quiz 1 is due tonight. Today's the 21st. It's due at 11:59 p.m. It's a short quiz. It is just about 5 questions, but it digs into your knowledge of the reading. So remember your book, the reading of chapter 1 and 2 from Proctor and Taylor. Make sure that you read over that, as well as you can look at some of those PowerPoints. So it's really short quiz. Mark your calendar. Also put this on your calendar. Last week in our virtual meeting, we started thinking about our class project, which is our virtual panel for July the 21st at 7 p.m. Our virtual panel will be called the AMSC, I love this title, Pastoral Toolbox. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in the beginning of our class period. Today's lesson, after we chat about the toolbox, will be on chapter 3, the Intercessor. Good morning to those who are joining us. So let me share our screen. Let's make sure we're all on the same page as we're talking about our pastoral ministry course. Okay. So let me just go back for those people who are watching the video and those who are here. So we find, can you believe it? We find ourselves right here in week 4, almost there, week 4. Remember the holiday was yesterday, so that's the reason why we met today. Let's talk about our discussion for week 4. Our discussion for week 4. Today we're going to talk about the role of the pastor as intercessor. So we'll chat more about that. And this is chapter 3 in your book. Chapter 3 in your book. And I think that's Proctor that does this chapter. Yeah, chapter 3 is Dr. Proctor as he talks about intercession. We'll talk more about that today. You should know by the end of today what the definition or what the role of an intercessor is. What is an intercessor? In your discussion post, you're also going to share what should this role in leadership do as an intercessor? How does it function? Also, in your post, I want you to discuss the importance of this role in the life of a religious community. Now, remember, the intercessor or the pastor, should I say, could be in a church setting. And remember, we also said in pastoral ministry, some can also find themselves in a religious organization, okay, which is kind of could function like churches function. Also, the last question that I have for you here is, what can happen when the pastor or the leader is negligent in their intercessory role? What could happen when the pastor or leader is negligent in their intercessory role. Also, here's a caveat. If you have experience as a pastor or in some type of pastoral leadership, please feel free to add your experience and engage in your classmates, because this is going to be really fruitful discussion for us as we're learning from those who are serving in that type of ministry as well. So let me go back. Let me backtrack real quick. Okay, and so today here's our PowerPoint as pastor, as intercessor. I do want to click on one thing real quick. If you're curious, where's my quiz? Go back to week 3 because this was from last week. Where's my quiz? Here's the quiz right here. I don't want to click on it right now, but you're going to open that up. Okay, you can save it to your computer. It's short, it's about 5 questions, and then you will submit that. Okay. Okay, let me come back to you. Any questions? Y'all good? Any questions? All right. Y'all quiet today. Juneteenth got you. We are going to talk about pastor as intercessor. Let me have a classmate, let me know. You can open your microphone. Let me know if you see my PowerPoint.
I see it.
Super, thank you. I use this picture. You see the picture of the baptism in front of you? And this is from my church, and my pastor is on the right. This is him with the bald head. And this is his pastor steward. And this young lady is being baptized. So we're going to talk about, and I thought this was a really cool picture. We're going to talk a little bit more about the role of an intercessor. Okay. Let me know if you can't see something. Okay, we're going to advance the slide. All right. Y'all see my question mark right there? Let me make sure I'm working good.
I see it.
Super duper. All right. Here's my question mark. So here's the question, and we can stop and pause for discussion as well. What is an intercessor? What is an intercessor? And so you're going to also have some vocabulary words that I'm going to put in. You'll see them in the slides to come, that I want you to jot down so that you make sure that you understand what an intercessor is and some other words. Okay, so when we talk about an intercessor, many times people may think that, okay, the pastor is to pray for somebody else, and that is true. Part of being an intercessor is to be a helper, to provide some type of assistance. Yes, one of the main things is to pray for others, and being an intercessor. And I just want to pause right here. You can open your microphones and share. So we said, the pastoral role serves as some type of helper. Yes, the intercessor prays. The intercessor gives some type of assistance in some type of capacity that the person has. Maybe they're going through grief. Maybe they are experiencing, I got to move because I'm being put out of my house. Maybe they're looking for a job. I just want to pause right here. Let's chat. What other things could fall up under the category of an intercessor? Anybody? And also feel free, if you serve in the role of leader, or if you serve in the role of a pastor or minister, you can add some examples that you've seen.
Not
Anybody?
sure if you've mentioned this, but the role that the pastor does in assisting those who've lost loved ones,
Yes.
I see that as one great intercessor role that they do. The others are sometimes just praying for the congregation or member who's just having some problem that he has nowhere else to turn to but God. but sometimes they don't know, how that they can communicate sometimes with God directly themselves. So the pastor can stand in as intercessor at those points.
That's good. Thank you, Walter. Can I ask if someone feels like typing, Ms. Duhart, if you are able to type, can we put those things in the chat? So Walter said helping in times of loss, helping when the person thinks like, I don't have any place to turn, standing in the gap for them. Very good. Anybody else want to add on to there? Maybe you've seen some examples of how your leader served as an intercessor. Because sometimes that word gets us stuck. Okay. All right. So we can add to being an intercessor. Remember, it is being some type of help or assistance. To be an intercessor, when we see it more so in a biblical script, when we see it more in scripture, we see it fall more towards prayer and praying or standing in the gap for someone and serving as assistance that way. And believe me, prayer is good. But then sometimes after the prayer, there may be a need for some type of action. What do we need to do to get this person the job or help them get some type of transportation to get to the job, or their baby is hungry. It's good to pray, but if your baby's hungry, I need some milk, or I need some formula, I need some Pampers, I need something tangible. How can we stand in the gap to do that? That's what we mean by intercessor.
Professor, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, go
It,
right
it's
ahead.
Marshall. And so I think also a couple that's engaged, you can sit down with them, counsel with them, and let them know that this is a serious thing that they're about to do, to be married, and because it's ordained by God.
Thank you. Oh, Janice put that in there already. Thank you. Thank you, Janice. Helping the married couples. Marshall, I want you to add a little bit more on there in terms of, let's put marriage as an umbrella. So we got the couple that's coming to get married.
Yes.
And we're doing pastoral counseling because it is like you said, those of us who are married or you've been married, it is not a joke. Lord help us, Jesus. It is
Yes.
not a joke. It is serious. It is more than just putting on the pretty dress and the tux, right? So, Marshall, I want you to add a little bit more there to intercessor and give us the umbrella of marriage. How also can the intercessor, the pastor, assist with, yes, you get married, but do we just leave them there at the altar?
Oh, no, no, no. Because after the marriage, 1, 2 years down the road, you could have problems. Sometimes financial problems, or sometimes with children where stillborn or unborn children. Sometimes the family go through real deep trouble and they don't know how to get out of it. And you can stand in the gap for them and let them know that God is still able. You can still try again. And like Walter said, it hurts. It hurts. And some people don't know how to get from that point. And the intercessor can step in the gap and pray and hold their hands and let them know that it will be all right, and maybe give some of their own experience, or another couple that they've helped before and how they got through it.
Very good. You see me typing in the chat some ways that they assist. Janice added, thank you for adding that in there. Janice said, assisting with the married couples. I added that in there from the previous example, helping with somebody who finds themselves in between homes. Definitely helping with funerals, marriages, like, excuse me, life hurts. Pastors also can give their experiences and how something has been mended in their own maybe families or their own marriage, helping with broken families. Thank you, Janice. All right, so the key thing, I'm gonna go back to our PowerPoint. So the key thing when we talk about intercessor, many times people get stuck on prayer. Okay, so it is prayer, but remember that the intercessor intercessor serves to help. So yes, prayer is a great thing and it is a great tool. But like we said, if my baby is hungry and I'm living in my car, I love your prayer, but I need a roof, I need some food, I need some gas money. You see what I'm saying? That's where the person comes in, and maybe the pastor doesn't do all of those things, but the pastor can point in the right direction and get somebody on the phone, or you see what I'm saying? Stand in the gap to help help that person get to where they need to go. All right. Let's keep moving. We are in chapter 3. So if you're wondering, we're in chapter 3, and chapter 3 was authored by Proctor. If you look on the left-hand side of your screen, I want you to remember this scripture. And it comes from 2 Corinthians 4:7. And it says, "We have this treasure in earthen vessels to show that the transcendent power belongs to God and not to us." I want to say that again. 2 Corinthians 4:7 says, "We have this treasure in earthen vessels." We're the earthen vessels. We're the people, earthly people, to show that the transcendent power, the saving power, the moving power belongs to God and not to us. So let me just pause right there. When we talk about pastoral leadership, when we talk about pastoral ministry, and in chapter 3, we're talking about being an intercessor, somebody who prays, somebody who assists in some type of way, right? And let's say, y'all, that the person, the leader, the pastor prayed for your child to be healed, right? And your child was healed, and is it the person? Is it the pastor who healed them? No, it was the power that read in 2 Corinthians, that power belonged to God, not to us. We are the tool that the Creator God used in that healing, but not the power itself. So that power belongs to God. And sometimes the people, sometimes the pastor can kind of get caught up. Look at the right-hand side of your screen. Now let's talk, we're going to open this up for discussion. The pastor or the leader of a religious organization is responsible for modeling a life worthy of emulating. That's heavy when I read that. People should be inclined to watch the pastor's life to get an idea or an example to be led to God. And Dr. Proctor said that this is a weighty task. That is huge. I want to hear from someone. Maybe you serve in that in pastoral ministry, and maybe you don't. Both sides have good opinions, but I want to hear from you. What do you think about that? The pastor or a leader of a religious organization is responsible for modeling a life worthy of emulating. Does it mean that the pastor has to be perfect?
Definitely not. None of us are perfect, and so that's been stated in many ways throughout the Bible. But we can all use, our strengths, to help out. So I think that would be the more efficient thing to do.
Surely. Thank you, Walter. So know that the leader is not perfect, but I hear but. Anybody else want to jump in? Look at there at that second sentence. Pastors should be inclined, people should be inclined to watch the pastor's life to be led to God. That blew me off my seat. I was like, ooh.
Amen. Dr. Berry, Professor Berry, I agree with it 100% that if you can't follow the pastor, who can you follow? If they're not doing right, you know, you can lead people down the wrong road, down the wrong path. If you're gambling and if you're partying and if you're out there Saturday night at midnight and then rushing to the church in the morning, you can lead them the wrong way. That's not the way to do it. It's just not the way to do it. We are in the world, but not of the world.
Very good. Dr. Taylor, thank you, Marshall. Dr. Taylor in this chapter says that it's a weighty task, and it'll make you really sit down and think about that. And so Dr. Taylor says in chapter 3 that the pastor or the leader of that particular organization has to be careful about what they do. Doesn't mean that the person is perfect, right? But if you are, and I'm just using an example. Let's say if the person is cracking nasty jokes, or you see this person, living real contrary to what they are teaching. Okay, so if they're cracking nasty jokes and talking about people and things like that, it lets the audience or the congregation or the people that they're leading, remember the sheep, it makes them think, oh, well, this is what we're supposed to do. And the same thing is true when we draw a parallel to any type of organization. So we're really talking also about organizational leadership. And if you have, even if it's a school, we expect certain things from the principal. The principal should be, upholding certain things regarding education. Doesn't mean that the principal is perfect, but we're expecting certain things because they are leading children and they're leading teachers. So any type of organization that you lead, the people are looking up to you. That's big, isn't it? All right. Now, let's look right here on the left-hand side. The pastor serves as chief intercessor. So this should be the biggest intercessor, the biggest helper that you have in that organization. And remember also, when we talk about religious organizations, they're also, even though they're organizations, they also function as businesses. We do deal with money, we do deal with human resources, things like that. But the pastor serves as intercessor. This means that the leader also must be trying to be closer to God daily. Over on the right-hand side, remember that the pastor is, yes, a leader, but we said this earlier, they are also a human being. Let me pause right here as we talk about being a human being. He or she may also feel in their humanness a sense of guilt at times for not being all that they know that they could be. Everybody has sinned in this whole world. Everybody is going to do and has done and is doing something that they know that they should not do, right? But let's just pause right there. I want to deal with the guilt. Have you ever thought about that? That sometimes the leader of this organization is like, man, I'm supposed to be leading y'all in this particular way, but do you know who I am? You know, have you ever thought about that? Anybody in that type of role where you just really kind of sometimes sit down and just think about who you really, 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 really are? All right. Go ahead. I heard a microphone open.
Professor Barrett,
Yes.
this Mr. Duhart. Good morning, class.
Good morning.
I just chimed in. You was talking about perfection a while ago, and I know that we are not perfect, but if I understand the scriptures, it appears to me that the Lord Jesus Christ wants us to press for perfection. He might not be perfected in everything, and the scripture also talks about marking the perfect man. I believe one of the issues in the body of Christ, or in the church per se, is men in particular. We are fewer in number than the women, and we don't have a whole lot of examples and a whole lot of mentoring
Mhm.
in the church. But I can talk about my pastor. He exemplifies some virtues and characteristics um, that admire greatly, because I don't admire many men. I haven't had a whole lot of men in my life that made a difference that I can look up to, not just in the natural but in the spiritual.
Sure.
But the scripture talks about marking the perfect man. So perfection is, we're supposed to press for to be perfected in Him. That's the point I'm making. So it's a measuring stick. I mean, the goal is to press toward that mark, which is perfection.
Putting
You
this
follow
in,
what I'm saying?
I do.
I mean, I don't know if anyone else agree. I mean, I'm just giving my thoughts about it. But on the other thing you mentioned about leaders examining themselves, wondering about themselves, um, that's why it plays to be um, walk in the spirit of humility. You can it's
Uh,
very easily get beside yourself if God is using you and you doing this and doing that. I mean, I can see someone getting beside themselves. That's why the Bible says we shouldn't think of ourselves higher than we ought to.
than what we are.
So
Yes, right.
so I guess the whole idea is if a leader is walking in the spirit of humility, they could stay grounded and they can be transparent about issues, because everyone have issues. The issues might not be sin, but everyone has things that they're dealing with. It could be a habit, or whatever, but everyone has things that they're dealing with. So if a leader's transparent and keeping it real, I believe they'll be effective and be able to maintain a soul and win someone to Christ. That's my thought about that.
Very good, Mr. Duhart. Thank you for sharing that. And I was typing some of your notes as you were talking. Class, I put them in the chat. Um, from what Mr. Duhart was sharing, we are striving for perfection. Leaders should examine themselves. He talked about the issue of walking in humility. I also put the note in there, everyone has things that they are dealing with. So I'm gonna go back to the PowerPoint, but I'm glad that you shared that. Um, Sometimes the leader is, I heard the word measuring stick. We have this measuring stick that we ought to be at or hit, right? But sometimes the person is just kind of in themselves like, I know let's say I'm eating too much, or I know I'm not exercising, or I know I yell too much. You know what I'm saying? These character flaws that the person knows that they have, that they are working on, that they're struggling with, but it doesn't mean that we lead the people in the wrong direction, knowing that we're doing the wrong thing. I want to add this last word down there, the seeker. The seeker, Seeker. So remember, okay, so the pastor is intercessor, but the pastor is interacting with a seeker. Okay, and so the seeker is going to come to that person in pastoral leadership as they are seeking for help. So remember that term, the seeker is the one who is looking for some type of help. Okay, now let's talk about the pastor and the seeker. How are we doing on time? We're doing good. Why people look up to the pastor? Now I'm gonna ask you this question. I'm gonna reverse it. Why do people look up to the pastor? Why? And even if it may not be your personal testimony, but why do you think just in years past or centuries past, why do you think people look up to that one in that leadership role? Somebody want to jump in?
Not sure if this is good or bad, but we are all like sheep, and we're actually looking for a leader.
Oh, that's a good point. That is a very good point. Thank you, Walter. You want to add some more to that? Why are we looking for a leader?
There are, many categories and things that we encounter in life that we just don't have, either good knowledge or just not know what to do in certain situations. Especially if. Now, I'm just going to use some example. For instance, if we have a car that needs to be repaired or whatever, we know we can find a mechanic. But there are a lot of things in life that we can't find someone who knows how to fix something specific in our life. So at those points, that's when we will turn to the pastor, because that's when you're like an intercessor, and sometimes that intercessor knows how to reach God, be that point that helps us connect with God in the way we need to at the moment, for what our internal needs are, whether they're emotional or spiritual.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Walter. So we say, why do people look up to the pastor? Look on the right-hand side of your screen. Somebody mute your microphone. The congregation may look to the pastor because I like how Walter said, we're looking because we need some type of help. We need help with, years and years ago, as our ancestors were leaving slavery or even in slavery, they were looking to the pastor for help out of this type of situation that they were living in that was not favorable. As they were freed, it was help me understand the scriptures because I can't read. So they looked to pastors for so many different reasons, but the key was help me do something that I may not be able really equipped to do right now myself. So the congregation now may look to the pastor and pastoral leadership in times of mourning. We said this earlier. It's not just sad times, but also in times of joy, graduations. I know we always make sure we invite our pastor, like we have a graduation party or something for the kids, invite them over. Marriages, we talked about baptism, the first picture that I had on our PowerPoint, new life or something like that. We're looking to the pastor to guide us. In other words, the person who serves in pastoral leadership is helping or guiding other people on their journey to get to wherever they are going. Okay? So they're a helper on the person's journey. All right. Y'all feel free to jump on in there if you have something. So remember,
Well,
and Sika, go ahead. I heard a voice.
no, yes, I just wanted to add it to what you just said, and I wanted to get it in before, uh, but life is a journey that we've never been on before. We haven't been this way before, so people look to the pastor uh, or for a shepherd to help lead them so that they won't make mistakes. This is the only chance that we're going to get at this. It's our only shot, so we want to get it right. So they look to the leader to help to guide them to avoid potholes in the road, so to speak, and to make the most out of this journey through life. As Paul said, follow me as I follow Christ.
Right.
So you're looking for something in that leader that is going to help them make that life more fruitful than if they were traveling alone.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Lee. I put your notes in the chat. I heard life is a journey. He said this is a journey we won't get. We only get one time at the journey, right? But the leader or the shepherd is being sought after. Remember the pastor and the seeker. Okay, so the seeker is the one asking for some type of help from the leadership. So, and I like how Lee said, so that we don't make a mistake. We make lots of them, but you know, the big ones, right? We're not trying to make big mistakes. All right, let me go back to our lesson. Almost done here. All right, now look, if the pastor is going to serve in the role of intercessor. Remember, we said the intercessor can pray, but also the intercessor can assist in some type of way. But the role of an intercessor requires some type of discipline in the person's life. Now, this is when we're going to start. We're going to have a little discussion here. And I have 3 questions for you. So y'all get ready to open those microphones. We're talking about the pastor living a disciplined life, a disciplined life. We talked last week about teaching. And remember last week we said if the pastor doesn't read or if they're not educating themselves, their sermons are stale or their Bible studies are stale. You hear a lot of repetition. The person needs to be disciplined in their relationship with the Creator God. So I have 3 questions for you. What happens when religious leaders fall from grace? Can you remember any famous tele-evangelists that had a strong influence on people? And then here's my last question. You can answer one of these or all of them. Should a pastor or a religious organizational leader live a indulgent life? And before you answer that one, I do have a picture. Hold on, y'all. I had a picture. Okay, here's a picture. When we talk about the indulgent life, I had this picture for y'all I wanted to add. Dr. Proctor says that for the pastor, the bottom line is that the affection for the things of this world impacts his or her effectiveness in leading people to God. That was on page 40. And Pastor John Gray, this is a blurry picture, I apologize, but this is a few years ago. He bought his wife a Lamborghini and the church went wild. A lot of people just went wild that he bought his wife a Lamborghini. All right, so now let me go back to my questions that I have for you. What happens when religious leaders fall from grace? Can anybody remember any televangelists that had a strong influence on people? And then the last question, should a pastor or religious organizational leader live a life of indulgence or a lot of luxury? Anybody want to answer one or some of those questions?
The first thing that comes to my mind when a leader falls from grace is that it causes people to shift in their walk. Because a lot of people they're more in tune to their pastor than God.
Yeah,
In other words, if the pastor fall, it causes a catechism in their growth or in their life. So some people, so in the scripture said that's the end result of that is that pastor end up having, or that leader end up having blood on their hands because they have caused people to fall from grace because of their lifestyle or their indiscretions or whatever. So that's the first thing that comes to my mind. But if a person is rooted and grounded in God and their leader or someone slips or fall from grace, that's not going to cause them to fall from grace as well. So
got you.
that's the first thing. That's the first thing that comes to my mind. It causes a shift in people who are not rooted and strong in God.
Thank you, Mr. Duhart. And Mrs. Duhart said Jesus also set the example. He said, follow me. She answered question 1. She's in the chat. Some of the sheep will scatter. So she said when the person falls from grace, the sheep will scatter. They'll kind of go off and do their own thing. Maybe they leave the church, or maybe they're not quite sure what to think. People forget the leader is human as well. Thank you, Ms. Duhart.
I think, Professor, also that Billy Baker was one of them. He was actually one of the televangelists. I believe his name was uh, Jimmy Baker, I believe.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
that was
yeah. Jim Baker,
yeah,
Jim.
Jim
Yeah,
Baker.
yeah.
Hmm.
And so, you know, it, it's kind of hard. I mean, if you got it, if you have a Cadillac, I don't think it's wrong for pastor to have Cadillacs and Mercedes Benz and
Mhm.
BMWs. I don't think that is wrong,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
uh, uh, you can't focus on that. You got to lead them to Christ. You got to lead them to Christ. If the Lord has blessed you with that, a nice home, a nice job, you know, I won't buy my wife a Lamborghini, but if I can afford a
Your wife
Mercedes
can't have a
Benz,
Lamborghini.
yeah, I don't think it's wrong. Luxury is wrong, but I think that your main idea should be toward the Lord. It should be toward the Lord. I drive a Ford truck, and so everybody just pick at my Ford truck. But I have passed a lot of brand new cars on the side of the road, and I throw my hand up at them and wave at them. I'm still ticking along. But the main thing is leading them to the Lord. That's the main thing. It's not what you got; it's what you do.
Thank you, Marshall. He said, don't focus on the material things. And thank you for adding that example in there, Jim Baker. David's typing his answer in the chat. There's another in the 60s, Grace. Oh man, I forget what was his name? Daddy Grace or something like that. Those people that
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, 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 that, yeah.
Yeah, they had like this strong influence on people, and it's an unfortunate thing when they know they have the influence, but then it turns into not helping the people, but it turns into helping themselves and giving money, and that money was not going to help people, but that money went in their pocketbook. Okay, Janice said, I believe that God allows this to happen so that people remember that God is perfect only, and that we should put all of our trust in him only. People, people make their pastor their God. Okay, got it, got it,
Yep,
got it.
yep, good point. Yep.
Yes. Um, Sharon said, question one, the world seizes the opportunity to, oh yeah, you're right, to mock the minister. So the minister or the pastor does something wrong, right? And they fall, and they are human because they have their weak points. Maybe their weak points were clothes. Maybe their weak points were women. Maybe their weak points were men. They got their weak point, and the devil know your weak point, right? But unfortunately, then when that happens, the church or the world says, see, look at them, look at them. And that's an unfortunate thing to happen. Thank you, David. David answered number three. He said, I believe pastors can live a life of luxury as long as the church is in good shape and the congregation is headed in the right direction. Very good. Thank you for your answer there. As we talk about, Proctor talked about the pastor living like this indulgent life, and it seemed like Dr. Proctor was a bit against it. He said he preached a more simplistic life, and it's all opinion. It's relative to the person. Someone said earlier that maybe the pastor has another job. Maybe they do well at that other job, right? And maybe they don't make as much from the church, and that other job that they have pays them well. A lot of folks have retirement. Maybe they had a good retirement from the government or from the military, and they always dreamed of a Mercedes, or they always dreamed of a BMW or whatever it is, and they're able to afford it. And so sometimes those things occur. but then it questions folks. I'm gonna go back to our lesson so we can finish. It questions folks sometimes and say, wait a minute, you got all this big house, and David said as long as the church is doing well, and then things ain't going too well at the church, that makes people sometimes think, well, where you get this from? You
That's a
know,
good point.
yeah. And it doesn't always mean that the pastor's stealing. Here's the thing. It doesn't always mean that the pastor has stolen anything from the church. It might mean that maybe the pastor had a good payoff from something that happened. Maybe the pastor saves their money very well. Uh, or the pastor and their spouse saved their money. So we always have to educate folks and say it may not always be stealing now. We know unfortunately that those things happen and it's sad. But okay, I don't want to get off. Okay, chapter 3, Dr. Proctor said being a pastor does not bring great social prestige. Does not bring great social prestige. I'm gonna ask you if you agree with that or not. The reason why he said that is that routinely pastors are not well paid. Unless you are TD Jakes or like John Gray in that picture and all of that, unless you got some big mega church, they really don't make that type of money because the church is a nonprofit organization. They raise funds to keep the building going. They're raising funds to pay the little staff that they have. For most churches are probably under about 200 or so people. If you got 200, you're doing real good. And the thing about it is that there's no monthly stipend coming from the government. It's not like somebody's paying tuition like at a university. And you're gonna have this money coming in every month. It's not like that. So many times it doesn't come with a lot of prestige. It's different from a role of a politician or an entrepreneur, and they try to measure themselves to those people, and it doesn't always go that way. Somebody wanna jump in there? Being a pastor does not bring great social prestige. That's from Dr. Proctor. Do you agree with him or not?
Professor Marshall again. I agree with him. I agree with him 100%. But
Mhm,
my thing is, as a pastor, if
mhm.
you tithe and your congregation following you, uh, um, the church shouldn't want for nothing. If everybody do what they should do, tithe, as the Lord say tithe, the church shouldn't want for nothing. You shouldn't have to have programs or anything like that.
Mhm.
The church should have money in the bank all the time. And then when there's a need in the community or in the church family, the church can quickly
Yeah.
get there and help them. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you. Thank you. That's good. And that's good experience that you're sharing with us. We talked earlier on the side, I said, there's no government money coming in. The money that comes into this nonprofit organization, right, is from the people. Anybody else want to add? I thought I heard a microphone open.
I, I noticed something, Professor Barrett. Um,
Correct.
I've, I've known men of God, women of God, to get a mission started, get a church established, well, get a church established. But, and they took care of themselves, but
Hmm.
God didn't really get a house built. They was in a storefront. So I agree with Mr. Marshall. Tithe should be able to, if people are believing in the ministry, the word of the ministry, they believe the word of God, they're tithing and offering, giving the offering, that should be sufficient to run a ministry. But unfortunately, so many people do not tithe.
That's
But
true.
they'll follow ministry, but they won't tithe.
That is
And
so
so
true.
many pastors will get their own house built and forget about getting God's house built. So that's the problem I have with pastors who want to establish themselves so strong in the house of God is not measuring up to what He has at His house.
What he has.
So that's an unbalance, or he or
That's
she has. That's an unbalance. So
good.
that's my point about that. If you're gonna have all these Mercedes and whatever else, make sure God house established too. So
That's a
that's
good point.
balance.
That's a good point,
And I
Mr.
had
Du.
one last
Oh,
one
go
last
ahead,
thing,
go
and
ahead.
I'm
You're good.
gonna shut up. I had some
Fine.
pastor friends told me that they would offend their folks if they were to have all those things. So to keep from offending their flock, they chose to live a minimum lifestyle. Now, mind you, they could have had anything they want, but they said their folks could not handle that. That came out of their mouth. Pastors who've been
Uh,
pastor for years,
I
and they
believe it.
probably have close to a couple hundred members. Just a thought.
Wow.
Mm.
Wow. That's really interesting. That's really interesting. That's a good points that you all are sharing. I want to go back and kind of tie what Mr. Duhart and Mr. Ingram said about, okay, tithing. And remember, we say in the beginning of this lesson is that the people look up to that person in leadership, right? And as I saw, my pastor doing well, and um, him and his wife and the children were doing well, and he would teach us that it's not no hocus pocus. I lived a life of obedience. I'm tithing. I'm doing, I'm not perfect. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. And he showed us, the way to go. So I looked up to him and his family and like, oh wow, okay. It's not no magic wand, but I'll try it, right? And as I did, I began to live that life that we're reading about. It's interesting how, as you were saying, I think Mr. Duhart was saying that the members, may not have been tithing, or maybe they couldn't get with it yet. Prayerfully, as they start tithing and start to see those doors being open for them as well. Sometimes I think we feel like I'm not worthy of the luxury car. I don't deserve it, right? And truly, we don't deserve nothing. But I work hard every day. How about it, right? And I said, I'm gonna buy me a car that's dependable and that I could pay for, number
Amen.
one. And that I could pay for, number one. That was the key thing. But the Lord blessed me to get it. That's the key thing. And now it was so funny. Um, I got a car about a year ago, and when we went back to church, they said, "Oh my goodness, you got a new car." I said, "Yes." I said, God's been good, and it just encouraged other people. So I like how you shared those real life examples of people not going overboard, but just learning to live within their means. And guess what? It's okay. It's okay to have a blessing. Okay. Oh, we're at 11:59. All right. I got four vocabulary terms that I want you to jot down. This is in your PowerPoint. You don't have to write them. Sacerdotal, clergy, lay, and intercessor. Sacerdotal, clergy, lay, and intercessor. All right. Before we run out of time. Good morning, Mary. I saw you joining us. Good morning, Mary. Janice also put this in. I'm sorry, I didn't see these messages in my chat. Miss Duhart said, oh, excuse me, let me go back. I was missing all these wonderful messages. Miss Mary said, churches have to build a church family following to be successful. Yeah. She said, I don't agree. It brings great social prestige because if you are meeting the needs of your church family, you are respected and supported. And Ms. Duhart said, okay, well, they do not tithe according to the scriptures. Faith-based grants are wonderful. You're right. And Janice, I'm not sure if people would allow a pastor that looks like, you better say that, Janice. Okay, Janice said, I'm not sure if people would follow a pastor that looks like the face of struggle. I'm not, right? I want to follow somebody and look up to somebody who has more
Amen.
than me. And I want to aspire to something that they have. If I don't have a house and they have a house or they bought a house, you see what I'm saying? And then they can walk me through the process of getting a house. I don't have a car, but now they have a car. You know what I'm saying? So back in the day, remember, the pastor was the literate one. The pastor could read, and the pastor could explain the scriptures to the people because most of the congregation was illiterate. Ain't nobody want no illiterate pastor just making up stuff, right? Thanks, Miss Duhart. And so the pastor was literate, and the pastor could read and explain the things to the people, and therefore encourage them. You know what? I want to get educated. I want to go to school. And so they started little schools and colleges and so on and so forth. Very good. That's a good one. That's a good one. And Ms. Duhart talked about it's an old Jim Crow mentality. Y'all good. This is good. This is good discussion. So I want to not hold you too long, but I want to talk about our virtual AMSC Pastoral Toolbox. And there are 4 areas that we said that we're going to talk about that night. Self-care, helping the pastor to take care of him or herself. We're going to talk about counseling. How can the pastor maybe not necessarily be the practicing counselor, but what are some tools that we could give the pastor? Outreach. How does the person reach within their community? And the last area was being a better shepherd. Shepherding. How do you spell shepherd? Now we have 4 areas that we are going to kind of break out during that 1 hour time frame. So we got about an hour, and we know we may kind of go over. And remember, this is July the 21st that we're scheduled for. Now, I would like to, and of course on this session today, this is not the entire class, if we could pull what I call captains for those 4 areas. If we could get 1 captain for self-care, 1 captain for counseling, 1 captain for outreach, and 1 captain for shepherding. And then I'm going to break the group down, and I say group, the class, into those 4 areas. And those 4 groups will start to compile research or maybe articles, little tips that we want to share in self-care. We want to share about counseling. We want to share about outreach or shepherding. So it's 12:04. I'm going to let you go in about 2 minutes. Do we have a volunteer to head up our self-care area?
This is Walter. I'll try that one.
Right. Actually, let me type. All right. Self-care is going to, the captain is going to be Walter. Do we have a volunteer for the counseling section? Yeah, okay, I'll keep going. Do we have a volunteer for outreach? And this just means you're the captain, you're going to have help. You're not doing all the work because I'm splitting up this class into 4 groups so that we can help all together. All right. All right, do we have a captain for outreach or shepherding?
Professor, I'll take either one.
Marshall, I'd like you on shepherding, please.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
So it's going to be
I'll give that outreach
shepherding.
a try.
Mr. Lee, you want to do outreach, please?
Yes, I'll give that a try.
Ouch. I can't spell reach. Yeah, captain for shepherding is Marshall. And did we get a captain for counseling? If not, I will find a captain for counseling. If not, I might be that captain. All right. Okay. So we're going to pause right here. We got our our 4 areas. Self-care, headed by Walter. Counseling, that might be me. Outreach, headed out by Lee. Shepherding, headed out by Marshall. Now, for those folks, you're going to get a group of students that are going to work with you all to figure out what do we want to say in about 10 minutes or so about self-care. What do we want to say in about 10 minutes or less about counseling, outreach, shepherding. So, 10 times 4, times 4, that's about 40 minutes right there. So we don't want to be too long. We can't give them everything. And then we want to allow a little time for Q&A. All right. Any questions? I saw somebody was typing. Mary's typing, okay. And so for the people who are watching the video and you can't make it today, if there is a group you want to work with, or if there's a counseling bug in you and you want to head that one, please let me know. And Mary's typing something there.